So we will kick things off. Is there anybody from the public who has a comment for the board? Is there anybody from the public make a comment? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move right along. So we have a new member joining us from the Department of Corrections, Eulalie Garcia. So I figure as we're doing attendance, if you could just say your name, your title, and the agency that you're with, that would be great. And then Eulalie, if you want to introduce yourself at the end, please do so. So Ram.
Good morning and welcome. Ram Abasteria, CFO, Office of Higher Education.
Bob Berry.
Bob Berry, manager of the database team in BITS.
Joe Campbell.
Yep, Joe Campbell, educational technology consultant for the Connecticut Technical Education and Career System.
Eulalie Garcia.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Katie, for the introduction. My name is Eulalie Garcia. Everyone calls me Lali because it's just that much easier. And I am the district administrator overseeing programs with the Department of Correction. That encompasses reentry services, personal growth programming, religious services, volunteers, community release, in and out of state transfers, and the Office of Classification and Population Management, which encompasses our records unit. So a plate load, but I'm really excited that the agency has finally joined this initiative. And as Katie stated earlier, I'm super excited about all the opportunities and collaborating that we'll be able to do with you all. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Scott Gall.
Nice to meet you. I'm Scott Gall, Chief Data Officer, Office of Policy Management. We administer P20
Ajit Gopalakrishnan. Are you here yet? Lauren Jorgensen.
I don't see him.
Good morning and welcome, Lolly. I'm Lauren Jorgensen and I'm the Director of Institutional Research at UConn.
Rose Kelly.
Rose Kelly, Interim Director of HMIS and Strategic Analysis for Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. Nice to meet you, Lolly.
Jan Keeney.
Hi, Jan Keeney, Connecticut State College and University System Office Institutional Research.
Eileen McMurray. Fred North. Maura Provancher.
Welcome, Lolly. I'm Maura Provancher with the Connecticut Conference of Independent Colleges.
Susan Smith.
Good morning, all. I'm Susan Smith. I'm the Director of Business Intelligence and Analytics for the Department of Social Services.
And Brian Sperry.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome, Lolly. Good to see you in this format. My name is Brian Sperry, working at the Court Support Services Division of the Judicial Branch as the Deputy Director of Information Technology.
Great. So Michael Girolamo is unavailable.
I'm also here too, Katie, by the way.
Did I skip you, Patrick? I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Just letting you know I'm here.
I marked you as present, so.
Well, and that was accurate marking.
So Patrick Flaherty.
I'm Patrick Flaherty. I'm the Director of Research at the Connecticut Department of Labor. We are the state's labor market information shop. We are also the data integration hub for P20 Win.
I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay.
We do have a quorum, so we can move right along. So the first item we have on our agenda is to vote on the data matching process. Is there a motion to approve and a second?
So moved. Second.
Great. So moved by Brom, seconded by Patrick. So before we jump into discussion, we wanted to go through the data matching process itself and go over the different pieces that we have added based on the conversations that we've had as a group and the feedback we've received. I believe Ashley is doing this. Okay, great. So I'm going to turn it over.
Sharing. So.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Ashley.
But while Scott's pulling that up, I know there's been a bit of background. So just to refresh people's memory, we created a data matching policy. Essentially, what this policy is saying is that we want our data matching to be as accurate and effective as possible. Scott's highlighting the goals. So to improve match rates, reduce risk to privacy, provide transparency, improve system efficiency. Essentially, what this policy is saying is that we'll use a process that ensures that these things are going to be insured. So that's our policy. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Scott, if you want to keep scrolling down to the process. So the process, we had a number of discussions as a group about the process and made some edits based on the discussions we've had in our latest discussion. As a refresher, we talked about disclosure review. We made it optional as per the vote of this board. So you'll see that reflected in steps 15 and 16 on this document here. So if you decide to, if a data request is to go through disclosure review, there is steps for that. And if it is not to go through disclosure review, there's also steps outlining that. As a reminder, the disclosure review would be that the data would come to OPM for review before it is released out to the data requester, just to review the package as a whole and make sure that the data in it is correct and accurate, and that there's nothing that would be wrong or concerning to the data requester once they receive it. Besides for that, we did get a little bit of feedback when Katie sent out the process document a little while ago. Feels like a long while ago now. So we did reflect those those concerns in this. So there's just some little edits in here. I think one of the bigger edits that's probably of note, besides for just little things, is a caveat in number 7 about file transferring, and if people have their own means of doing it, that would just be something to consider. So is there anything else that I'm missing that's big from the OPM team? And if not, I'm happy to field questions.
I think I just want to add that this is the process and the steps that that all of us will take from the point at which the data request is approved, and we are ready for data to be moved, or the PII to be moved to the Department of Labor for matching purposes. And so we just wanted to make sure that each step was clear for folks, since this is what we're all going to be agreeing to. So I guess at this point, we can open it up to discussion.
Thanks, Katie.
Dan?
Hi. So many people were betting I would raise my hand. So I did submit some additional comments earlier this week about some things that are important to CSCU. I see from what you shared on the screen that those changes have not been made. They're particularly important to us. So I just need to let you know that.
I'll just I'm sorry, I should raise my hand. Jim, based on that, it sounds like you're probably not ready to approve it today. Is that accurate? So
that's correct. And also we need to have our legal department review it too before we can approve. And that hasn't happened yet either. So even if edits were made, that still would need to occur, probably in tandem with the new DSA that you sent out for higher ed for UConn and CSU. I think we're going in connection with that together. So until legal says go, I can't say yes. I'm sorry. Okay. I know it's a pain.
That's fine. This is we have the process for a reason. So I think just in the interest that we have a pretty crowded agenda, I would suggest, I don't know the procedure for it, but we table this and, we can follow up offline to resolve any of the comments, get revised drafts back to the board and bring it up at the next meeting.
Move to table.
Forthcoming meeting. Thank you. I will second.
Can I just have a discussion before we vote on that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
We've been talking about this for a while, and and I know things have to go through the motions and every agency has procedures, but is there any way that we can have a timeline established, from Jan's team or whoever else is probably not able to move forward with this? And I understand, we want to make sure that it's 100% before we approve it, but I would just prefer not to have 2 months from now or a month from now, or 3 months from now, having a conversation again and it go up for a vote and then us saying, well, we're not ready. And again, this is not pointing fingers at anyone. I understand everyone has procedures, but I think it's important for us to be able to try to move forward as efficiently as possible. And again, I'm not suggesting that we're not trying to move forward as efficiently as possible. I just think it's important to have a schedule so that we can be able to move forward. Thank you.
I'll just say for us, OPM's role, we're the operating group, we set the agendas for the governance meeting. So maybe, I think, Jan, we can figure out a timeline that feels realistic for you, and then we can try and figure out how to, and again, anybody else that's got comments, and then make sure we calendar this to the appropriate time.
So just to the point of the timeline, it's not all about CSCU. It's also about the changes that OPM makes when we make a suggestion, whether or not those changes are how they're reflected in the document. So and also I can't speak for the timeline of our legal department, but I do understand, Ram, really good point. I would really love to have this move along as well. I'm right with you in that corner. So we'll move as quickly as we can.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on tabling this? Okay, so motion was made to table by Ram, seconded by Scott. I suppose we could do a voice vote unless there's a request to do a roll call. But all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, so we have tabled this. Okay, moving right along. The next item is data security updates. So the data security working group has been meeting over the last few months and have come up with a series of recommendations. They were included in the board packet sent to you last week, and Coral is going to go over those recommendations.
Great. So as a bit of a refresher, because it was quite a long time ago, in the February meeting, there was a vote to approve both the data security policy and process. And part of this process included the establishment of a way that data requesters would kind of prove that they have the system security to actually take on P21 data and have that shared with them. In the process document, it originally said a questionnaire. So we put together a team of kind of IT and system security specialists from different agencies. I can go ahead and share kind of the memo we wrote that you received in that packet. So to start off, who was in the group? So it was Peter Carey, the Chief Information Officer from CSU, Jason Whelan, the Chief Information Officer from DSS, Alexander Garvey, the Information Technology Systems Subject Matter Expert from DMIS, Chris Bernard, the Chief Information Systems Security Officer from UConn, Justin Hickey, the Deputy Chief Information Officer from DAS, and then Scott and myself. So this group met between April and 2023, and the goal was to identify and create a data security questionnaire or alternative that would be required for any future P21 data requester that was established in the P21 data security policy and process. So during this kind of this working group, we looked at the different options. So what are the different kind of formats that we could do this data security questionnaire? What are the different ways that we could share it, the different software or ways to collect it. And luckily, during this time, Justin mentioned that DAS was actually currently piloting a system called OnSpring to manage these sort of questionnaires. So we did create a pilot data security questionnaire in OnSpring that we had several of the data governing board members submit kind of these, pilot questionnaires, and that seemed to work really well. So I'll go through these, the 5 recommendations from the board. So the first is that the data governing board should amend the data security process to allow for the P20 when data requesters submit a data security plan as an alternative to the data security questionnaire. This is because during that pilot, it took, we realized that it could take quite a while for some smaller agencies to submit this entire questionnaire, whereas they might already have a data security plan that they could pull from. And it just seemed like it would be an easier requirement, not easier in terms like they're still going to have to cover the same information, but be less of a burden than the full questionnaire for those smaller agencies. The data security questionnaire will require data requesters to cover the same exact information as the data security questionnaire, but just in a potentially more accessible format. So OPM second, OPM should develop a guidebook in consultation with security experts with the type of data security documentation that will be required of requesters. So this should include examples of data security plans and questionnaire responses, just so that individuals that are requesting data have, they know what to prep before they start filling these out, and also before they even submit a data request. 3, the data governing board should develop guidelines on how requesters will be provided with the results as well as justification when and if the data plan or questionnaire is rejected by a participating agency, as well as remediation suggestions to receive an approval. So this basically means, so if you review a data security questionnaire from a data requester and it doesn't meet the standards to share your data, you'll have to provide why it didn't meet the standards, just so that data requester knows how they can improve their system and get an approval. 4, the P20 win should use OnSpring to deploy and manage the P20 win data security questionnaire, subject to approval from BITS. And 5, each agency should identify any minimum requirements that must be met by data requesters when submitting a plan and questionnaire. And that would likely go on the same page on the P21 website as those examples of data security plans and questionnaires for data requesters as they're prepping. We intend that we'll take any comments and we're going to change or make the changes in the data security process, and then likely vote on that at the next data governing board meeting. Jan.
Any comments? Oh, sorry.
Do you have your hand raised, Jan?
Oh. No, I don't, but you could maybe I was going to type in the chat. Are you looking for suggestions to the recommendations or suggestions to the questionnaire, or both?
I mean, I think we would take both. Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any. I know that we had CSU's security CISO was involved. I know that. So, but I did appreciate the examples that you provided from North Carolina, and there was another one. I think it was Washington actually, and the way that they approached some of the security questions, I thought were good too. Might have some suggestions for tweaking. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions?
Just to reiterate Coral saying too, this is the recommendations on the working group that had the CISOs from several of the agencies involved. But we want to make sure people review it. If you have feedback on any aspect of it, to provide feedback, hopefully in the next month, and then we would make any changes. I think there's pretty modest changes to the existing policy, make any changes to the policy, bring it back to the data governing board then. But before doing that, so you've got a chance to review it and say like, oh, okay, I think we should do this differently. That doesn't make sense to me. Because it's a small working group, didn't have everybody involved in it. So you've got I know we sent this out in November. You have it again now for December, and then just review, provide any comments and feedback, and then we'll make changes to policies and circulate those in advance of the next meeting. Yeah, so Jan is in the chat. Are the security recommendations going to become policy? So we have a data security policy and process that Data Governing Board approved earlier in the year. That's what Coral's referencing. And so if I think the working group had some things that would lightly modify that process and the policy document. And so we would incorporate those edits with any additional feedback from the Data Governing Board members into the policy and the process for P20 win. We aren't making formal policy changes yet because we want to make sure people can engage with the feedback from the working group, see what they said, and say like, okay, that makes sense, that doesn't make sense. And if there's something you have questions about, you've got a chance to identify those, and then we'll see what kinds of policy changes we make. I think they're pretty modest, but we haven't actually like redlined the documents yet, but you can read it and see for yourself.
Okay, so the next item, and I'll turn this over to Scott, is it looks like we have everybody from DISC here. And so this is an exciting partnership that we're going to be participating in. And so I'm going to let Scott kick that off.
Well, and I'm going to screen share slides for 1 second for this. But we're very lucky, I think, to have, hopefully kick off, or we are kicking off, I guess I should say hopefully before a lot of things. We are going to kick off an engagement with DISC, which is Data Integration Support Center. I've got 3 folks right from DISC here who are going to tell you more about what they do. There's 3 reasons for working with them over hopefully the next several months on looking at P20 win, and they'll talk about what they do, the expertise they bring to this. But for us, I think there's a couple of different reasons. One, it meets grant requirements that we'll talk about if we have time at the end of the meeting. For our Workforce Data Quality Initiative grant, we've said, our Department of Labor said in that grant that we're going to take a look at both the ability to produce data on the workforce development system and the technical infrastructure that we have for P21 that supports that. So we're going to get a close look at the technology through their engagement. What I'll pull up in the slides just because sometimes it's easier to see this in writing. What we have, I know that this board has spent a lot of time looking at is, there's 2 additional reasons for it. One, which I think is not great, and then one which is a little more aspirational. So one reason for looking at this is we really have had a lot of various issues that have come up, I think, in the past year or 2, and we want to make sure that we're addressing those issues. And so that's where I think having DISC come in as a third party with a lot of expertise in this area will help give us like a good assessment for some things for the system and a roadmap and recommendations for changes. They're not making changes, but they're going to give us sort of a roadmap and a plan for things that we could do. So the things that we're trying to address, this is, again, what everybody here has seen and been through cases where we've had the security incidents over the past year. 3 incidents reported to the board, 4 exposures of data. Through those, we came up with a remediation plan now twice. The one that this board approved in September has short, medium, and long-term actions. And so the folks from DISC are really helping us really on all 3 of those, implementing the short, medium, and long-term actions. So hopefully you see continuity with what we said we were going to do to remediate those efforts and the work that they're doing. And then in addition to that, what I know has happened in the sort of the processing of requests through the system, and particularly going through the dry run, is we've in addition identified sort of a range of other issues with data quality, with security, with privacy, the release of records beyond what's necessary, data quality issues, having to go back to requesters sort of repeatedly to address things that are that they're not getting the data they expected. And we went through the tabletop exercise as well. So for us, I think there's some urgency to address these issues, and I hope that you all share that. And we're very lucky to have DISC kind of help us implement some of the things that this board has indicated support for in the past. That's the not great reason, but it is a motivator and it provides some urgency. I think the other better reason is where we can use data to address questions that your agencies have that are critical policy questions for the state that help inform practice and make lives better for residents in Connecticut. I'll flag the one here that's really described in the Workforce Data Quality Initiative grant, where we're looking at education and workforce pathways and the complex way in which real people navigate all of these programs, and to reference the work that DA Garcia does at Department of Correction. that you can see where this is, this system, but it also encompasses the corrections and criminal justice system in the state. We're looking at, outcomes for reentry. So real people navigate these programs in a complicated way. They don't go through the same institutional silos that we have. And in order to have data that reflects the way people navigate these programs, we have to be able to match, multiple agencies together. That increases the complexity of the matching process. We have to be able to pull different data sets together. That increases the privacy and the security considerations for the system. And we have to be able to do things like provide role-based access to the data that we can't really currently do, that give us a layer of security, but give agencies sort of transparency in how their data are being used that we don't have currently. So I think in order to do things with data that your agencies are interested in, we're going to make sure we have the technology and the infrastructure to support that. So this was Office Workforce Strategy kind of presented this a couple times to Data Governing Board, Executive Board. It's drawn from Data Quality Campaign. Very nice graphic, like reflecting how real people navigate systems. And in order for our data to reflect that, we need a little bit, we want to make sure we're taking a close look at what we can do to make sure P20 is kind of up to the task of that. And so we're grateful to the folks from DISC for engaging. There was a much longer introduction than I was anticipating. So I'm going to flip the floor over to them, and they can tell you much better than I can the work that they're proposing.
Excellent. Thanks for that introduction, Scott, and good morning to the P20 WIN Data Governing Board. Thank you very much for letting us have a portion of your agenda this morning to talk about some of the work that we're going to be doing in support of the P20 WIN. I'm going to start my screen sharing, so hopefully you guys can see that. And so I'm going to go through a little bit of what is DISC, what do we do, some nuances, and then I'll turn it over to Baron Rodriguez, our executive director. My name's Sean Cottrell. I'm a director at the Data Integration Support Center. A little bit of background. I'm a former chief privacy officer and data governance coordinator for the state of Wisconsin, where I was heavily involved with the data governance program for their P20W plus longitudinal data system, as well as Wisconsin's early childhood integrated data system. I see a few familiar faces on the call this morning beyond just Scott's team from my past life working with the SLDS state support team at the U.S. Department of Ed, as well as my past life as a subject matter expert on student privacy and integrated data systems with the Privacy Technical Assistance Center at the U.S. Department of Education. And that's really where we come to today. So the Data Integration Support Center at West Ed is a nonpartisan, nonprofit, California Joint Powers agency. It was created by public agencies for public agencies, and that's really the core of DISC's mission, is to support public agencies with their integrated data systems. We're going to talk a little bit about modernization. One of the examples that Katie spoke about earlier today, with the work that she was doing in Colorado and some of the other work that states are doing to expand into other sectors of data for their integrated data systems to really provide that whole person view of an individual within our state, right? How are individuals receiving services? What do those interactions look like? And are there opportunities to provide better services, more services, right? How can we improve that delivery, and what other improvements can we experience when we really look at this data combined across these different sectors? But to combine data across sectors, there's a lot of challenges. When we think about in the U.S., privacy is addressed sectorally. So if we're using education data, we have FERPA and the Protection of People Rights Amendment. Health, we've got HIPAA. Workforce, we have all the workforce and labor laws, and there's privacy regulations embedded within each of those. And so when we look to really use this data, understanding how to navigate that sort of complex legal landscape really provides those concrete use cases and helps us really get to making that connection between those two sort of disparate spots that might not really have that connection. One of the things, as I mentioned, we provide services to public agencies. Public agencies are really talking about, if we take a step back and we look at the landscape, SLDSs have really only been around for about 20 years. There was a significant investment from the federal side in the early 2000s during the ARA years and the Race to the Top grants to really build out these data systems, but they're really focused in education. And now that some states have built those out and have mature systems, they're having the conversation to say, well, our SLDS is a great value add. It helps us inform policy for education. So how can we add on other sector data to inform policy for workforce or for social services or for healthcare or fill in the blank, right? It's really what for your state, what is the focus? But when we really get that, we see that there's security issues. We recognize that there are data quality issues. There are issues with timeliness. Unless we really tease out how are we going to process these things, how are we really going to operate and navigate within this integrated data environment. And so when we really look at those individual state needs, it really is, just like what you guys were talking about, looking at what other states are doing, is that something that could potentially help us, or are we recognizing a need within ourselves that we don't see being addressed somewhere else, and how can we really approach that? And that's really where DISC comes in. At DISC, we focus on, we have 5 focus areas. Some of those are legislative analysis. We have legal expertise. Not only do we have a legal expertise that is available for you, but that legal expertise crosses sectors. So we have an education-focused legal team. We have a team that's focused on workforce and labor, and then we also have a group that focuses on social service laws. And those groups are all practiced and experienced in navigating and negotiating data sharing within these sort of cross-sector engagements. Once we really identify what the needs are for the state, right, this is where, again, we kind of look at what are the services. So at DISC, our subject matter experts are all practitioners from states who have worked in integrated data systems, not just worked with integrated data systems, but from building those systems, modernizing those systems across other states. We address privacy and governance, external legal supports I already mentioned. Legislative analysis is another one of those tools in our tool belt, where we can, if there's a law that is restricting what you guys need to do, well, it would help to understand like what is the actual restriction. Like just saying that there's a law that speaks to this, well then does it allow us to do things up to a certain point, or does it prohibit us from doing things altogether, right? Again, really understanding the nuances helps us really navigate and move through this landscape. Some of the work that we're going to be doing with Connecticut, and Barron will talk about this in a little more detail momentarily, focuses on some of our security and our architectural supports. When I was on the SLDS state support team, I was actually brought in to help build out an audit and evaluation program. So as a SLDS grantee, there are grantee site monitoring visits, and a component of that monitoring visit is this security and privacy review. It's not really an audit, but it really is like, what does your privacy and security program look like? How does that complement the use cases that you've identified that, are how you're going to really operate your system? And then architectural supports. When building out an integrated data system, if you aren't accommodating the different architectural requirements, it's very easy to paint yourself into a corner, and all of a sudden we've limited ourselves. For example, we've seen some states who they have 2 attorneys who don't agree on a specific interpretation of a federal privacy statute, and so that state then builds 2 parallel systems that generate different outputs, and now we have a data quality issue. And so it's really understanding like how can, taking this action right here, like what are the potential ramifications down the road, and how can we make sure if this is the direction we want to go, we really have those safeguards and those guardrails in place to kind of keep us in the bounds, so we're moving in that direction, we feel safe, but we can, we know like where the edges are, we can kind of make sure that we're moving in that direction that we really want to, and where we know that it's going to make that impact for our state. And this helps us deliver support for state efforts, enhance security reviews, and aiding partners in updating regulatory structures to provide a clear path to IDS success. So this isn't just state support efforts, but this also these enhanced security reviews, and then also this updated regulatory structure. States across the country, if you're familiar with the Future Privacy Forum and the Data Quality Campaign, like we mentioned, or that was mentioned earlier in this meeting, states are very regularly looking at their privacy laws, whether it's building out a comprehensive consumer privacy laws that might inadvertently impact an integrated data system. We also provide some supports there where we can review proposed regulations and provide some guidance on where might those potential impacts be to a already established system. And so, our thought partnership and expertise really addresses knowledge gaps, resource needs, critical data collection, integration efforts. And the goal here is to create consistent and secure cross-sector data that's transparent and equitable for all. Our goal isn't to support any particular person's agenda here. It's really to help answer the hard questions. And again, thank you for allowing us to sit in the meeting today. I've had the privilege of sitting in many states' data governing board meetings for their P20W systems. And you guys are doing it spot on. There are needs. How do we make sure those needs accommodate the unique needs of the partners who contribute to this great system? And then how can we make sure, again, we address those needs, but then provide for the usability of the system? I'm going to go a little bit into our experts. As I mentioned in the opening, I'm formerly from the state of Wisconsin as Chief Privacy Officer and Data Governance Coordinator. Baron Rodriguez, who I'll turn over to momentarily, is our Executive Director, formerly CIO for the Oregon Department of Education, former Chief Operating Officer for the Data Quality Campaign. Baron was also the founding member of the Privacy Technical Assistance Center at the U.S. Department of Ed, as well as the SLDS State Support Team. So Baron has been with the states and with the programs as they've been growing. And now we are able to provide this service offering. And one of the things I should have said earlier before I turn it over or go through these last two folks, at DISC, we don't stop at the federal regulations. When I was on PTAC and the state support team, we could really only say how federal privacy laws would impact an integrated data system without saying, well, but I'm aware that your state has this particular privacy law that is going to really change how you approach the designing or architecting the system. At DISC, we're able to really dive into that conversation and really bring in some of those legal resources to speak specifically to, here are the nuances in the particular regulations that are affecting or impacting your implementation of an integrated data system. And here's some options for how we can proceed forwards, right? Again, our goal isn't to say, here's the only way forwards. It's, well, here's the considerations and what's going to work best for you guys. We're really here to help support the conversation and really be a thought partner for you. Besides Baron, who is also a certified information privacy professional, and some of those other security certifications that he has, Omar Alabula will also be providing some dedicated supports to the engagement with Connecticut. Omar is our cybersecurity expert on the DISC team. He's one who he also provides cybersecurity support at West Ed. And West Ed is a research and development focused in the education ecosystem. But so our security team is very familiar with using data for permitted activities and for other research related activities. Leah, who's also on the call today, formerly from the state of Maryland, where she was heavily involved with the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, is also going to be a primary support for the Connecticut team. She was the Department of Education in Maryland's first acting data officer under the first state chief data officer. And so that's also something too, right? When states are changing how they administer controls for data, we also have to recognize that these integrated data systems that we're building have to be able to respond to those changes within the state ecosystem. And so again, and with our one of the strengths that our experts bring to the table is, like, we've been in public sector, like we understand, like we've lived it too, but we get really excited to talk about this stuff. And so thank you very much for having us this morning. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Baron to talk a little bit about some of the specific works with Connecticut, as well as to speak a little bit about some of the modernization work that's going on across the country. Baron?
Thanks, thanks, John. And I think I have screen control. Try here. Can everybody hear me okay? You're gonna have to move the slides, John. So can you move to the next slide?
Yeah.
Thanks. So one of the things that, since I've been in the sector for quite some time, and actually I've worked with Ajit and Jan Keeney when we were originally doing the P20 win in my previous roles, but we're at the point now where we're, because it's been this many years, we're seeing a lot of new efforts when it comes to the need to modernize and adapt to cloud-first technologies, the ability to use identity resolution systems that have kind of changed what I would say rules, and I don't mean laws, but rules around matching. So things have advanced quite a bit. And we're seeing a lot of states, some of the ones that were leaders are now having to rebuild these systems at this point. So it's pretty normal part of these longitudinal data systems to do so. And as you can see, I'm not going to read through this slide, but you can see there's been a lot of changes to the way people conduct their linkage and work. And to me, in some senses, and Jan can attest to this probably as well as Ajit, Connecticut was kind of one of those in front with your federated model, and your data sharing agreements were complex. There was a lot of work that went into building that work. So you should be proud of the work that you've done, but it is normal to have to go through this modernization process. And so we've seen several states are in the process. Some of the grants that we've seen that have gone through, states that have reached out to us, you can see they're literally doing the same type of thing that Connecticut's doing, which is we have to modernize and rebuild our system. We have new technology that can really allow us to. Now we have to navigate how we do that legally, how we build that framework and things like that. So, so if we could go to the next slide, Sean. The approach generally is going to be that we really work to design the technical, legal, and security frameworks to leverage the modern IDS as it is today. IDS being integrated data systems, a more generic term. The other thing that I didn't mention earlier is, again, Connecticut was a leader here, but a lot of states are starting to move more to the model of using a centralized data center and not necessarily housing it in education. And that becomes especially important when you're working with social services and other agencies that may need a neutral site to be able to legally comply. So that does change how you build these data sharing agreements. The final bullet on here is really going back to what Sean said earlier, which is our privacy laws in the US are sectorally based, and they are also based on use cases. And I think that's usually a really difficult concept for some folks to grasp, because linkage and sharing and disclosure sometimes are conflated. And so that's going to be part of the conversation that we have to have with both the technical and the legal teams when it comes to what's allowed and not allowable. So I think we really specialize in that, and we're working with many states that actually have or are moving to this model. And so I think this is really going to be an exciting engagement. Next slide, please. And I apologize for the stretch and things like that, but it was an up and down vertical timeline that I was creating here. But this is just a quick overview. Obviously, we're here at the governance kickoff. And as you look at this, we can certainly move some of these things around, and some of these will be parallel tracked. So we can do multiple things at once, like the security review is going to use certain staff on our side. The mapping and governance and privacy side is going to use different staff. So we can do some of these in parallel to make sure that we get this done. But you can see that we're gonna spend some time like just mapping how things currently are, right, and figuring out where those agreements are, what the pain points are, while also working on our enhanced security review. That was something that we put into place specifically so that we could focus on the privacy aspects of these systems and the multi-agency aspects of the systems. And I think that becomes very critical as we're really working on the modernization efforts, because it really, the typical security reviews are usually very focused on hackers, the outside threats. There are some internal threats as it relates to policy that these normal reviews address, but this really kind of gets into those disclosure avoidance areas, making sure that the governance is there to release the data, right, make sure the right approvals are there. So there's a lot more depth to the kind of review that we'll be doing. As we do that, there may be things, if you look at the next area, which is urgent security issues, if any are discovered as part of that project, we will want to address those obviously immediately. So that might require some technical short or medium term fix so that we can address those right away. But the goal is to really fully map the modernized IDS approach for Connecticut so that then you can take those the recommendations would come here to this group and provide those completed recommendations to really help build the framework for your vendor RFP and going through the procurement process. Short story here is that probably very shortly we will be working with specific Connecticut agencies and doing some interviews around the security as well as some of the mapping processes. We'll be setting up a regular cadence of meetings to make sure that we understand the concerns and some of the nuances of the relationships between the agencies and the data sharing. So we're going to be starting that process in earnest very shortly. So we're looking forward to that. With that, I think that's my last slide. I'm going to hand it back over to Scott and see if there are any questions that you'd like from us or from Scott.
Did you want to maybe put this? Well, it depends if people have questions, I guess. But the timing is one of the things we wanted to make sure people had a sense of. So this is kickoff, and sorry. And our hope, again, kickoff today, start some work that will have some, some level of effort associated with it, and that'll run through April. And similar to what we talked about in a couple of the cases, we'll play back conclusions from that. Certainly at the conclusion, back to the data governing board. And I think like Baron's saying, like at interim points throughout kind of when we can provide information back to this board, but it'll be mostly, I think, the OPM, Department of Labor, and the BITS folks kind of involved in this, but we know we need more agency involvement over time. So if you have a strong interest in this, you want to participate, I think that would be great. Like we said, it says here, we're going to kick off some of these processes. The other sort of things for timing, we're hoping security assessment we'll be able to do end of January. That will potentially involve some engagement with your agencies, an interview, providing some documentation or something, just so we get the sense of the lay of land. It's a third party that's doing that. So once we get the dates confirmed, we can send that back to the group so that you can plan ahead. I don't think this is going to, again, necessarily involve everybody at every point, but the overall time frame for this is from now through April, so that we can come up with a good set of recommendations at the end of this process. Now I will stop talking again. Any other questions?
Any comments, questions, thoughts?
Yay. Okay. Just say yay. Great. And thank you.
Awesome. We're really looking forward to this partnership. And so we'll be in touch with folks about the security assessment and other fun opportunities that we will be taking on in the next few months. So I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip the Axway update. I don't know that we have an Axway update, but I wanted to jump into the grant updates quickly, just because we have a lot happening. So we're entering our last year with the 2019 SLDS grant. And so we will be having a site visit from the U.S. Department of Education, our program officer, and some other folks on February 13th. We understand that that is the second week of session, but hopefully this won't take up too much of everyone's time. But we plan to have a meeting with executive board members that morning. A letter will be sent out either from us or Secretary Beckham inviting executive board members to participate. This will be a really great opportunity for us to talk about the work that we've been doing. There will be a meeting of data governing board members, and then we'll be identifying other stakeholders, system users, other agencies, and then other folks who have used the P20 win system. So we'll be sending out invites for that. I don't know, Scott, do you have anything to add on the site visit? This is a pretty big deal, having the feds join us for a day to talk about the work that we've been doing here at P20 Win.
No, we'll send the agenda and an invitation letter out soon, probably in the next few days. But for folks here to just mentally block some time on February 13th, because we're hoping you can be present and involved with it. And again, they've been very supportive through this process. Department of Education has been wonderful partners to work with on the sort of 2 grants the state's managing. But they come on site and they really want to make sure that they can get folks involved. So just try and block time, and we'll send a note out to the executive board members for the agency leadership to get their availability. Again, like Katie said, second week of legislative session, not ideal, but hopefully we can get good enough showing.
So we'll be following up on that. We also got the 2023 SLDS grant. So we will be kicking that off in the next couple of weeks. We will be focusing on research, collaborations, and state policy priorities. So that's a lot of fun. And then Scott had an update on the WDQI grant. We have a lot of grants. So we have a lot of deadlines and requirements that we will be working with all of you to make sure we're fulfilling over the next year or so.
And just on the IES grant, we still have we're looking to hire a research analyst that closes on December 5th. So if you can find that posting on the DAS website. So if you have anyone that might be interested, please share. Thank you.
And we can share the job posting with everybody too.
Thank you.
Scott, did you have anything to add about WDQI?
There was, I don't remember it. So the DISC folks, it is helping. It's one of the sort of deliverables in the grant is to have a consultant come on and take a look at the ability to manage some of these complex use cases for data. Workforce development is particularly like thorny one. There's dozens of different programs. So the DISC folks are part of that grant. I think, again, we have more compelling reasons and we're fortunate to be able to work with them, but it does fill one of the grant requirements there. Patrick, are we missing anything on WDQI? I don't remember anything that might be.
I don't remember anything either. Sorry.
Well, I guess so. I will add that the data request that's looking at workforce program outcomes and career pathways for Connecticut residents has been distributed to the participating agencies. We've made some revisions, so we will be redistributing that. So hopefully we'll be able to make progress on that shortly. And then for the IES grant that Ram referenced, that will be looking at the impact of the Roberta Willis Scholarship Program. So that data request will be shared with agencies in the next month or so as well. So we have a lot going on. It'll be great. That went faster than I thought it was going to. Are there any?
Can I give one more shout out quickly? So also, again, with adding Diego Garcia, Department of Correction at the beginning, we had a nice, and did Brian's still here. We had a very nice, we had an opportunity to present P20 Win also at the Juvenile Justice Policy Oversight Council, or JPOC, which is a longstanding initiative through the state, the Department of Correction, Department of Labor, someone else, DMS, maybe, DCF is definitely involved in, and the Court Support Services. They've had a longstanding interest in cross-agency data sharing, and I really think with the addition of the Department of Correction a month ago, some of the things that they had set out as goals, probably almost a decade ago, you can now sort of meet those goals through P20. So it was a very nice discussion with the board. We're very grateful to the JPOC leadership for making time in the agenda for that. And I know Brian was there, Diego Garcia was there, and there were representatives from the other agencies, and did like a really nice presentation on juvenile justice data and some other things there, so you can watch it. But it's just another good opportunity to share and highlight the work that people are doing. They referenced the Disconnected Youth Report several times in the discussion, and so there's receptivity to the work that your agencies are doing. And just want to, not everybody's in all of those, so it's a way to sort of highlight some of the things that are being done. It's nice progress to see.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
So in the final minute of our meeting, is there anything else that folks want to bring up or discuss? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Or you guys, we can keep meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
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 Have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a
Thank you.
great weekend. Thanks.
Yeah.
Good.
See ya.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.